about the others. We're on the 10th chapter of the book of Acts, beginning there with verse 1. And let's notice what he's saying here. We're going to deal with about verse 4 verses of this chapter. And we can see some of the things that is important to us. We'll discuss those as we go along. But there on verse 1, it says there was a certain man in Caesarea called Cornelius, a centurion of what was called the Italian regiment or band, a devout man, and one that feared God with all his house, who gave much alms to the people and prayed to God always. And we can see it says that he saw clearly a vision about the ninth hour of the day, an angel of God who came to him and said, Cornelius. And when Cornelius looked upon him, he was afraid. He said, what is it, Lord? And the angel said unto him, your prayers and your alms have come up for a memorial before God. Now, here is the first introduction to a Gentile, that we might say, that we have for hearing the gospel of Christ. Now, before we get into it, notice he talks about, he said that he was a centurion of the Italian band or Italian regiment, depending on which version you're using. And when we talk about the term of centurion, what does that come to mind for his position in leadership? Over about 100 soldiers. So he is responsible for this. We see that the term centurion or this 100 soldiers is mentioned a number of times. If you go back with me to the book of Matthew in the 8th chapter, there beginning with about verse 5 to about verse 10, we find here there was a certain centurion, which was also of the Roman army. Now, the Roman army, even though we could see that they were in charge, they made sure that everything was kept, we might say, in order. So these soldiers had authority to arrest, or they had authority to kill, or whatever the case may be, in their position as a centurion. He was to guard the people. But the point that I'm getting at is, there in the 8th chapter, here was a man that came to Jesus, if you remember, and he said, I have a servant that is sick. And Jesus we're going to kind of paraphrase it all together. Jesus said, okay, let us go to him and we will heal him. Anybody remember what he said about that? He said, nay, Lord, I'm just a lowly servant too. I'm a man that I say that this one go and come and this and that, whatever the case may be. He said, I know that you can do it just by saying, telling him that he's healed, basically. And we would see that Jesus healed the man. But the comment is verse 10. Anybody remember what he said?
I have found so great a faith. I have not found so great a faith.
Not in what?
Not in Israel.
Not in Israel. Here was a Gentile, one that evidently had been associated, as far as the Jews were concerned. He was aware of their religious deeds, so he was sympathetic to the Jews, and we can see also Cornelius. We'll talk about that in a second. But this was an individual who was aware of all these things, true. But he was also aware of what? Christ's power to heal. So he had been around these things, he had seen these things, and he knew that Jesus could do that. So we see that he asked him, you don't even have to come to my house. This is how much faith he had that Jesus could do it. So that was a wonderful thought there. We find another incident. There's several times incidences for centurion, but this time turn to the book of Matthew again, the 27th chapter. And we want to deal with about verse 50, I believe that's right, 50 through about verses following anyway. 3, 4, 5 verses there. Anybody remember what's going on here? Jesus is being hung upon the cruel cross. He is at the death door, we might say, and he cries aloud that it's finished. And there's a soldier there who was a centurion. So this band, or this centurion, or this soldier was there to guard the people, or to make sure that these things were carried out as they had been given an order, or given for his death. And to also keep from any riot. Remember earlier, there was those who cried, "Crucify him, crucify him." There was this party of disgruntled individuals, we might say. And then there was this crowd that we might get gathered together, and they were inflamed, we might say, with not even knowing what they were saying, what they were doing. So this centurion with his soldiers, or those under him, was keeping order. So in order to keep that was where he was. But what did he say about it?
Surely he's the Son of God.
Surely he was. Now, what takes place a little bit later on is also significant. We can see during this time what happened to the earth as far as the sun. It turned dark. Okay. At the same time, what about the veil of the temple? It was rent. Okay. What about the earth? It trembled. So he was aware also, I think, of the Jews themselves. He was aware evidently of the Jewish people and how they had revolted against what Christ was saying. And like I said, he was keeping order. But after all this, he said, surely this was the Son of God. What happened a little bit later on after that? Ma'am? There was, after Christ's resurrection, was it not? I believe that's correct. Is that right? After his resurrection, what happened to those that were dead, had died? Graves opened up, walking around in the city. What was that an awareness of? The power of Christ. You think it might have impressed this centurion? I think it probably did. Now, of all these things, here's Cornelius, also being a centurion in the same area. You think they had been talking to each other about some of these things? I think so. I think the Jewish, as far as the Jewish people or Jewish religion had an influence upon these individuals. And the centurion was aware of that. So I think he was touched by the things that was taking place there. Notice something else. There in verse 2, he was a devout man, one that feared God. And notice how much, as far as his fear was, I say his fear, his respect for God, with him and with what? All of his house. So what influence did he have as far as his household was concerned? They listened to him as the authority that he led. So he was not only a leader of these men, of 100 soldiers, but he was also a leader in his house. Okay. Now, notice something else, which gave much alms to the people and prayed to God always. Two things: his alms giving and his prayer. Verse 30 of the same chapter, what did it say as far as, well, actually, I'm going to get ahead of myself there. Let's wait just a second there. That's in verse 3. But gave much alms to the people and prayed to God. Why did he do those things? Was he influenced?
Salvation.
Ma'am?
And grace and salvation.
Okay, well, verse 3 does. But why was he giving alms to the people and praying? Was he not aware of God, even though he was not a Jew?
Well, we just read where he was a devout man and feared God.
Okay, so he was religious, was he not? We see that.
Well, he was more than religious. He was a follower of the God of heaven.
Okay,
There are a lot of religious people in the world that don't follow the God of heaven.
well, that's
In that
true
day
too.
as well.
And that's the point that I was getting at as far as this fear was not, like I said several times a week, is not the shaking in your boots type. It was respect for the authority that God had and aware of being the creator or the God of the universe. He was aware of that. Where did you learn that? From those that he was with as far as the Jews was concerned. So here he was helping those that were in need, and he was also praying. Now verse 3 says that he saw a vision evidently about the ninth hour of the day, an angel of God coming to him, and saying unto him and Cornelius. We're going to stop right there. First, he saw a vision. Now, there's two terms that we use sometimes as far as vision. This verse, well, actually go to verse 30. What did you say in verse 30 of the same chapter? He saw a, what did it say? Verse 30 of this? Anyone? What is verse 30?
Behold.
Or down that side.
Man stood before me, right arrow.
Okay. So 4 days ago, I was fasting. There in verse 30, an hour, and the ninth hour. What's so unique about the ninth hour?
3 in the afternoon.
Sir?
3 in the afternoon.
That's right. This is the last hour of prayer, or the last hour of incense. And so he's praying. This is something that's also unique, is it not? The time frame. He was also keeping the time frame that the Jews was praying. Yes.
I'm not so sure that I can go that far with that, because Cornelius is under the patriarchal law. He's not under the Jewish law.
Correct.
He's a devout man because he was responding to God as did the patriarchs. And God communicated to patriarchs differently than he did. Once the Jews were there and they had their law and whatnot, God wasn't talking to those people directly anymore.
Okay.
Now, with Peter's case as one of the apostles, yes, he's going to substantiate what he's doing with Cornelius, which was a common practice under patriarchal law in God's communication. So I think it's a leap to suggest that Cornelius was practicing what the Jews practiced. He was practicing what God had instructed him to do, in whatever way that was.
That I think is true. That's true. But again, along that line, this time frame, he saw an angel. It wasn't something that he visualized, or it wasn't something that he dreamed. This was actually an individual standing there and talking to him. So what significance would that bring? Being an eyewitness, you can't deny it. You can't say, well, I was dreaming and all of a sudden I woke up and this took place. Can't say that. He was wide awake, we might say. Can we not say that? He's fully aware of what was taking place. So we can see as far as he is a religious individual in that sense, that God appeared to him and God is talking to him. through this angel. All right? Any questions? Notice now, so the angel of God coming to him and saying, Cornelius, and when he looked on him, he was afraid. I guess there's a certain amount. Why? Well, let's put it this way. When man is afraid, what causes fear? Usually it's something of the unknown. It's the unknown. We're not aware. It's something that's not like everyday things. We've become kind of accustomed to everyday. We don't fear getting in our car. We don't fear this or that because we do it every day. But something completely out of the ordinary kind of scares us. But it seems like this was the case here. This is not something this is something out of the ordinary, not something that happens every day. And he was afraid. Why should we be afraid of the presence of God? Have we ever been afraid of the presence of God? What have we sinned against God? And do those things contrary to what God says?
Would you not be startled and a little bit ill at ease if somebody you didn't know was suddenly there speaking to you?
And, well, not only that, but just all of a sudden, you're in meditation or communication with God in prayer, and then here's the idea there of fear is again getting back not to the type of quivering. It's just something unknown and unexplainable at the time.
And I don't see that the text says that Cornelius was in prayer when this happened. Verse 2 says he prayed always.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just says in the ninth hour of the day, an angel appeared to him. It doesn't suggest that he was praying at the time.
Well, I was looking at verse 30 again. He says, well, I was fasting until that hour. There was the ninth hour. I was praying in my house, beholding the man kingdom. I was using that whenever he referenced back to what he was saying there in verse 3 and 4.
I see that.
But here he is, at least we know that he was communicating with God. That is prayer when this took place. Or at least he was in a prayerful attitude, whatever the case may be. But notice something. He says that the prayers that you have been making, God is aware of. So God's law, God has never left the world without a law to live by. True? During the patriarchal age, Mosaic age, Christian age. Now, the question that I'm going to raise is, the patriarchal age, how did God talk to his people? I say to the people.
It's households.
Sir?
It's the households through prophets.
Okay. So God in sundry times in different manners in times past talked to us, prophets, and like I said, that's what God has done. Now, to the Jews, the law that was given to them had been promised by God, given to them on Mount Sinai. And who was it given to? Just to the Jews, was it not? Correct. That law was to them. It wasn't given to the world, it was given to the Jews. Now, what law was the world living under then? Rest of the world, we might say. What law would they be living under?
Everybody, including the Jews, to that point, was under that law.
Patriarchal law. Okay. So we can see that. Well, what did? Well, let's go back a little bit. What did Jonah do whenever he was sent to the city of Nineveh? Were they under the Mosaic law? They were under what kind of law? Patriarchal law.
And he wasn't sent to proselyte them either.
No, he was sent to warn them.
So he was sent to tell them to repent, which meant that there was a system under which they could be amenable to God that was separate from the Jewish system.
That's right. That's exactly right. So here is an individual that was aware of God's laws. Now, he was not, like I said, he was not a Jew. This is aware. I think this is obvious. So the law that he would be under would be what?
That's right.
That's right. So he was complying with the laws that God had given back in that time. So we need to keep this in mind. So many times people say, well, he was under the Mosaic law. No. He was under the law of the Jews. No. He was under the law that God had originally given. Living by that. God has never, like I said, God has never left his people or the world without a law to live by. All right. Even back in Adam and Eve's time, did God give them a law? Right, he did. Of every tree you can eat, except for the one. That was God's law. Consequences was also given. The day you do it, you should surely die. There's the law, there's the consequences. Well, the Jews, as far as the patriarchal, there was the law, there's the consequences. Under the law of Moses, what was it? The law, the consequences. What about the Christian age? The law, the consequences. So we have a law to live by today that is still pertinent to our lives today and will be until the end of time. So many people, no, it's too old. We need something else new. And that's not true. It will always be, it will be the law by which we're going to be judged. And it will be the law on the day of judgment that will be open and we'll be judged by it. Whether it's patriarchal age, Mosaic age, or Christian. We'll be judged accordingly. Yeah. All right, any questions? We understand. That's okay. All right. Now let's notice something. It's not until this chapter that the Gentiles had the gospel preached to them. And I think we can also see that it took divine intervention for this to take place, did it not? And we can also see that it was not until the gospel was preached to Cornelius that the Gentiles was really answerable to the gospel.
Two things to that, and it's interesting. Paul, that we'll get back to later, was the apostle to the Gentiles, and in Romans he said the gospel was the power of God's salvation to the Jew first, and also to the Greek.
Right.
This is 10 years after Pentecost that we're talking about right now.
Correct.
For Cornelius. We're talking about a 10-year period since Pentecost when this event that we're discussing takes place. And that 10 years was the Jew first period. And now it's going to be Greek.
Okay. Very good. All right. Any other comment? All right. Another thing. Lest we fail to observe, what was one of the things that I find a key to Cornelius and his conversion is what was he doing that, now he was giving alms, I know that, and he was helping the people, didn't know that, but what was the most unique thing, remember what law he's under, that was unique to him, and that was prayer. Prayer. We've talked about that so many times, that prayer is so important. And he was aware of prayer, communication with God. It's the only way we can talk to him, is through prayer. No other way. You can send a telegram, a letter, call him on the phone. I know there used to be I used to have a old 78 record. That was a little bit older than big 78. There used to be a song, No Telephone in Heaven. I can't even remember who sang it, but anyway, I still have that record. And it's really unique. But we could see that the only way we can communicate with God is through. And he was doing that. So he was concerned. I think it shows that he was concerned about his well-being as well as his household well-being. Because he and his house heard the gospel. Okay. All right. And he said, now send the men to Joppa and call for one Simon, whose surname is Peter. Now, notice something in the next verse. He lodges with one Simon a tanner, whose house is by the seaside, and he shall tell thee what thou oughtest to do. Something unique here. Anybody see what he's talking about? Simon, what? What was it, Simon? A tanner. Tanner. All righty. What was it that he tannered? Hides. All right. What was one of the things that the Jews were forbidden to do? To do that. All right. So they would have been quote unquote unclean because they were dealing with the dead animal. Here's one that was taking the hides and tanning them for different things. So what would this Simon would have been quote unquote unclean under the Jewish law, would he not? Don't associate with it. But here is Simon, or Peter, and he is living or staying with him during this period of time. Living in unique area. So the laws that they were trying to bind as far as the law of Moses, it was no longer in effect. This, I think, is one of the things that makes it unique in that sense, because those old laws, or those old bindings, those old thoughts, are now being replaced with what God calls the perfect law. Wasn't aware of that. Now, and when the angel which spoken to Cornelius was departed, he called two of his household servants, there, verse 9, and devout soldiers of them that waited on him continually. And when he had declared all these things to them, he sent them to Joppa. Now, upon here, he had those that he trusted, those that were, we might say, his chosen servants, those that was more close to him than others. He sent them. How quickly do you think he did that? I think it was immediately. I think it was. Now, when we hear the gospel of Christ, we understand the requirements that we need to do in order to be in a relationship or in a saved relationship with God. How quickly should we do it? Whatever. For instance, what happens whenever the blue lights come on and we're driving down the highway? We say, well, I'll think about it a little bit later on. Just keep on going. Yeah, after a while, they get upset about it. Just keep on driving. But the point is that we pull over immediately because we're aware of what we need to do. This is a similar thing. When we are aware of what we need to do it then. Not keep on postponing or say, well, let me think about this. We're aware of the relation that we have with God. No.
He's home immediately, there's water.
All right, so we have several illustrations. We have, the Ethiopian. What about, a little bit later on, the story of Ananias, talking to Saul? Now, what there's, right, we go back to that. Here's all these things that we can see, the illustrations. And they didn't postpone, they didn't begin to think about waiting another, hour or two, or month, or week, or a year or so. Well, let me think about it a little bit. Kind of do it now. All right? I'm sorry, time is up. I hear the kids coming. All right, the Lord willing, let's begin then with verse 9, and we will pick up there with our study. Appreciate it so much, everyone's coming. Thank you.
You back from this?